I should go down in history with Sigmund Freud and Jesus.
We're here to alleviate that.
You can't take life so goddamn seriously, honey.
Oh, no, it's the beginning of the end, man.
Say what you want, do what you want, be what you want.
And it's always the same.
I mean, rock and roll is ridiculous. I don't want people to worship me. I want them to get up and do what I do.
I don't know. I think just being around this long is a milestone in itself.
From day one, my focus has been to be a performer. I've never doubted it.
I'm a real workaholic, and it hadn't really dawned onto me to what extent I took so much time out of the day committed to whatever project I was on. And it became a process over the first year or so, is trying to balance my life in terms of, well, how many of these very precious moments am I willing to give away at my age, 45? That, you know, do I want to keep on inundating myself with one work project after another and sort of leave virtually no room for a real solid, wonderful relationship to start flowering or blooming? Bloom, bloom. It's all been to do with some kind of basis, a foundation of what we felt we shared in common, and that became the starting point. And for both myself and Imam, she'd achieved a great success in her own profession. We both travelled an awful lot to lots of the same places. We had certain friends that we had mutually in common. We both had ex-marriages. We both had children. There were a lot of fundamentals right there from the beginning that sort of really gave us a platform, I guess. Anyway, I fell in love with her.
I always have with kiss and tell books.
What do you mean kiss and tell? That's a media term, a buzzword that I find not only rude, but not attractive in its intent. Kiss and tell implies that there was a secret affair to start with. There are very few things in my life, in fact none, that are secret.
Certainly not after this book.
No, after Free Spirit. Everything that's in here was in Free Spirit. Come on, Kim, I know you got to make this a good interview, but, you know, let's get a grip.
When I was about, well, from 17, 18 years onwards, I knew that I wanted to do something on stage, and it involved music, but it also involved theatre somehow. I'm never quite sure what it was until I started working on the Ziggy kind of thing. I knew it was something to do with amalgamating theatre and rock in a way that I hadn't seen before. It had more to do with this kind of surrealistic thing. And I guess Ziggy was like sort of trying the water out. It was in the first attempt. The late 60s were great for people like me because it was the era of multimedia shows and great music going on. And London was full of mime companies, the best of which was a group of mimes called the Lindsay Kemp Company, who were very fundamental in teaching me quite a bit about stage work, stage craft, how lighting worked, how you could use your body on stage and make a dramatic statement. One always sort of thought that theatre was about props and things, but it's not at all. I mean, I hopefully could do any of the shows that I have done without any of the scenery or props that I've used, because a lot of it was body work, how the body language, how the body moves, and what statements it can make on stage. And I kind of got all that from the Lindsay Kemp Company.
I don't know why I look like this, Mrs. Kemp. My mother was so beautiful. She was knocked down by an elephant in the circus while she was pregnant. Something must have happened, don't you think?
I love the Elephant Man. Jesus, he was so good. I mean, he was great. You believe it. After a while, the illusion becomes real. You just see it. It's just great. I thought it was a monumental achievement for him. He was very happy.
Sometimes I think my head is so big because it is so full of dreams.
And 90% of the time, I've only ever taken a role on. Firstly, it's a reasonably good role, but primarily because of the director involved. A favourite role is a little tiny thing, cameo role that I did for John Landis in a movie called Into the Night, where John gave me complete freedom to sort of play it up.
What are you talking about? Okay. I represent Monsieur Mavie, and I can assure you that he can be far more reasonable than the Savant.
The Savant?
The Shell Secret, please. Death Squad. Iranian Gestapo. Shaheen's boys.
Shaheen's boys.
I like you, Ed. I do like you. You're very good. The Stones.
What?
Where are the Stones?
I can't help you.
We do understand each other, don't we?
The other one that I got complete freedom on was the Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which is a performance I don't think was as successful, but it was certainly a great thing to do. Slightly, I guess, I hope anyway, is the hunger. I felt very uncomfortable with that role, although I loved being involved in a Tony Scott movie.
You know, John speaks before he thinks.
Is that what he does? I can't figure him out.
Please, play the Lola for me, even if it is a little saccharine.
Are you sure you're not John's father?
Quite sure.
He really made you feel tremendously sorry for that guy. He generated great pathos for that character. You really felt bad for this aging, rotting vampire. He has a natural elegance. He's truly elegant. And that comes through in all of his performances and all of his personas.
I think one of the things we found out, in a way, together on Blue Jean was that he is a very accomplished, funny, comic actor. You know, often in the past, I think people had seen David Bowie as this kind of remote, myth-like, godlike character who unveiled a new mysterious image every 3 years. But one of the things that strikes you immediately when you meet him is an incredible sense of humor and wit and humor about himself.
It's nice to have you come out and see how we really live our lives, us pop singers and guitar players. I spend as many evenings as I can doing this kind of thing.
Thank you.
It's a relaxation from the toils of being in the studios. Can I use your mic? Yeah, do you want my mic?
¡Qué morro! Hey, David, it's mine.
Oh, your pen! I'm sorry. Yes, I thought I might get away with that. But when My microphone's given up. Hold on. It's yours. No. But when one's spent a few long hours in the studio, there's nothing better than walking around with 300 or 400 friends, looking for a coffee.
I happen to have been lucky with who I ended up working with. I mean, whether it was David Bowie or something I'll be doing with Frank Zappa, they're legends now. So you don't even look at the artist anymore. You look at this amalgamation of experiences, points of views, and impacts they've had. So you're not even looking at a musical artist anymore. I think that's the wrong way to define somebody like a Bowie or a Zappa. They're not musicians at this point. They've become icons of various types, and they've become things that represent various situations for their audiences. I think music has become, in a way, its popularity is that we linked it to various phases in our lives, and we'll remember our lives in part by the music that accompanied that era.
Do you express yourself through dance? Do you feel the comfort?
I'm not a dancer. I couldn't dance my way out of a brown paper bag. Or green paper bag, come to that. I think I have a body language, but I think that's the essence of it, because you can see some of the fastest, slickest, most choreographed, highly densely choreographed movements in the world, and they're not necessarily going to move you at all. Or you can see one man do one thing, and it can become, this is the height of pretentiousness. And you see it said so much, just in that small gesture.
Is it attention?
Yes, it's focusing energy.
Strides in the last 15 years. Do you think it is or could be as good of a cultural barometer as rock is?
Oh, there's some modern dance that I think absolutely floors me, that I really think is absolutely fantastic. My two favorites are a group called the Pina Bausch group from Wuppertal, and another one, a Canadian group called Human Footsteps La La La, who I think are absolutely fantastic.
I was going to ask if you knew Edward Locke from Canada.
Yeah, I know Edward, yeah. We spoke, in fact. There was a possibility that one time he might have been able to work with me on this, but I think what we're probably going to do is something next year where I would like to write specifically something for him, for what he's trying to do. His thing is so subjective that it would have been very hard for him to have fallen into the wider extremities of the show that I'm doing. But his influence is certainly felt in the show.
January.
Dance and pop, or dance and rock, have been associated for a long period of time. I don't know which was most interesting when Elvis Presley was young, whether it was his music or his dancing. But in the audience's mind, the two came to mean one. They were looking at music. But from a choreographer's point of view, that man's moves were very interesting as a choreographic experiment. So When people say, I don't know anything about dance, I disagree. I think they've been exposed to a certain type of dance, but it's been within a pop context.
Both you and Edward Locke have similar backgrounds in that you both were interested and studied with Lindsay Kemp, but I'm wondering whether your work on this tour has any of those Kemp ideas still in it?
I think Lindsay taught me the basis of any stagecraft that I've subsequently sort of picked up. It would be hard to imagine what I'd be doing on stage without having worked with him extensively. So I guess it's always there, but there's nothing that one could actually say, oh, that's very Lindsay or whatever. I guess the days of feeling out walls and things have gone.
Now Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with weird and the spiders from Mars. When he played it left hand, but he made it too far, became the special man.
Trying to work their way into those crevices of the imagination and the mind that are generally blocked by rationality and by sort of figurative or linear thought. And I think it's breaking that down and understanding that, especially now in the later part of the 20th century, it's almost not a choice to try and be rational about the events and what's happening, because we fragmented our system of living so thoroughly that it's often only through mirroring that fragmentation that we can actually get some sense of what's really going on. And even if it's an unconscious understanding, you see. Because I think we derive so much of our understanding of our environment and the people that we're with at an unconscious level. And I think pretty assuredly that that's what our dreams throw up at us, is there's a kind of a metaphysical mirroring of everyday events through these strange, surreal images, the ones that we can't touch with our literal mind.
Yeah, you know, I would love to speak to you about it.
God, did I say all that?
You did. I was going to say I'd love to speak
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
On that. No,
I was always very seriously affected by my dreams. The dream state seemed to be so potently full of images and weaknesses and strengths that I felt were contained within myself. It came through art as well, when I started seeing things like movies by Salvador Dali and Buñuel and work by De Chirico. I said, yes, that's exactly how my dreams felt. And that's how I want to write, or how do you work like that? And then I started reading people like William Burroughs. I started learning about the cut-up techniques that they employed to create new ways of thinking. And I thought I'd try and apply that to writing. So that's kind of how it evolved. But it was originally because of the dream state. I found the dream state magnetic. It just captured everything for me.
Why do you think you're a good collaborator? Is it for the very reason you just said?
I think I enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy watching other people enjoy it as well. I mean, that's something that really it's a real high. You know, you really feel as though you're contributing to somebody else's life if you can see that they have been really happily surprised with something that they've done, that they've contributed to.
Is that the case with you and Jimmy, with Iggy Pop?
I think I'd like to believe that. Yeah, I think you know, maybe we opened up some new avenues and that his approach could be in terms of singing and whatever. I think he got into a whole new idea of melody lines and stuff, working with me. But on the other hand, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching him work with lyrics. The way he works with lyrics was quite extraordinary. It's still something I couldn't do. It works in a very different way to me, but...
I think of China Girl when you said
yeah, it's an extraordinary lyric, and it really was sort of thrown out when he was writing it. It was literally thrown out on the recording session, almost verbatim. It changed maybe 3 or 4 lines, but it was an extraordinary talent that he has for spontaneous free thought.
When you look at the two of you working together, it's almost like the same coin, two different sides. There's David on one
I think
side.
that's probably why we get on so well anyway, and we're very, very different from each other. He's a lot more exuberant than I am, I think. I tend to be quieter, more reflective, but he's kind of always a little bit on the dangerous line as well, and I'm not particularly. I'm much more of an observer, whereas he's much more of a participant in things.
We're so opposite, it works good.
You're so opposite?
Yeah, sure.
In what ways?
Well, I mean, he's slick, and I'm what I am, you know, and he's London, and I'm Detroit, and it's,
Do you both want to be each other?
I don't think so, no. I think we're very happy this way.
Best friends, if not my best friend. But as a collaborator, I think really it's been, possibly, I've made him aware of the qualities of his own voice, which I believe he wasn't really aware of until we really got him singing on Blah, Blah, Blah. And maybe I was able to let him know that it didn't have to be quite so histrionic in what he was doing physically or with sound, and still have the same kind of weight as a performer and as an artist, that he was in fact a brilliant lyricist, fabulous lyrics, and that he really should never forget the fact that he's a born poet, and that musically I was able to structure things in a way to make his lyrics really work for him. Not that his lyrics didn't work on his earlier things, of course they did, they were marvellous, that's what drew him to my attention in the beginning, but it was just to try and evolve him in a wider way, to make him more accessible, because I thought it was so unfair that he was receiving so little attention when there were so many bands out there that owed him so much, from the Pistols onwards.
With a distance, I don't see him from myself. He sees me as a character. Probably an American beatnik who survived. Probably Kerouac 30 years later, and I think I see him as one of the only representatives of the enfranchised world that understands me, or that I can stand. He's a realist from a very sophisticated urban setting, yes, who, when I met him in 1970, he already had his plan for media domination or whatever, whereas I'm sort of an inspired idealist from the Midwest who really has made every mistake in the book, and I sort of just follow my nose. I'm happy if I can create a good song.
And Brian Eno, the Berlin Youth.
Well, he lets the instruments do free thought for him. He lets his computer do the walking. Yeah, well, as I say, he could explain it to you better than I could.
Because he's a much better musician than me. So when it came to playing rhythm tracks, for instance, he played those much better than I did. Mm-hmm. However, I looked after the sort of sound element, the sound end of it, and I suppose I was the source for a lot of the voices that were actually used, and finding voices that I thought could be recontexted in some interesting way. Mm-hmm. But it was pretty much a shared record. After the first couple of pieces, we really worked together.
Oh, I love him. I mean, I can listen to him spout his theories for hours. And I can watch him changing them as he gets bored with it as well. He will accommodate his theory to suit the occasion, but I mean, he's a wonderful conceptualist, and he really is a wonderful conceptualist. I really feel he's becoming a great observer of New York society, even more deeply than he was before. I like his new work a lot. Like all of us, he had a kind of a floppy time. Things went sort of floppy.
And, which was your floppy time?
My floppy time. My last floppy time was between 84 and about 84 to 88, I think those 4 years, I found decidedly.
Commercial. I mean, he said, look, you know, I want to get a smash. I really do. I want to get a hit record. And it was a little bit shocking to me because I said, wow, you know, David, I mean, let's just make a great record. And if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He says, no, that's what I always say. I really want a record that's on the radio and that people buy and that people like.
I had all this sort of manic success with, oh yeah, let's dance one more time. And it sort of floored me for a while there. And it threw me right off course, much more. I mean, I was surprised myself how far it threw me off. And the trouble is, coming out of it the other end, I look back at the 2 albums that I did subsequently, and it annoys me to the very core how I threw away some really good songs. Because there's some excellent songs on those 2 albums, but I always felt that I really gave them away. I let other people do arrangements for them, which I should never have done. They did a very adequate job, more than adequate. A bit too adequate, in fact, sometimes. And it just didn't feel like me anymore. The albums just, both of them came off not feeling like my work. Cashing in on my songs, are you kidding me? They're great songs, I'm a very good performer.
Ducats tourism show.
I'll tell you what I feel about that. There's about 15 arena artists worth going to see, and until I can't produce a show that is worth going to see, I won't stop doing shows, you know, and there's the cashing in on old songs. That's ridiculous. That's 25 years of my life. Get out of it.
Is that why you got involved with Tin Machine? You needed to shape yourself?
I'm sure that that's why I was drawn to the project when Reeves kind of suggested doing it. I'm sure that's what made me work with it. And it has a, to me, I see a good longevity to it. Because it does give satisfaction to one particular side of my nature, which is a very sort of, this latently aggressive, very upfront part of me. The upfront me.
Baby universe, baby universe, baby universe.
What it's done is really polarized my writing in as much that
who have had, you know, really no achievement behind them that would warrant them having an attitude or a big head. And I've worked with some severe assholes, and David is like the most normal person. And you would give him the slack to be a jerk, simply because he's done so many cool things. You know, you could see how if that went to his head, it seems only natural. You know, but he's just completely normal. You know, he's one of the nicest people and most open-minded people I've worked with.
Normal, nice, open-minded. Well, they may not be the words that instantly spring to mind when you think of David Bowie's various persona through the years, but they do kind of sum up his equal opportunity, just one of the boys kind of approach to the band Tin Machine. Even though the critics griped about Tin Machine's 1989 debut album, and griped again with the 1991 release of Tin Machine 2, complete with controversial cover art. Well, David Bowie seems to be immune to the criticism. Nearly 15 years after he recorded with Hunt and Tony Sales, Soupy's Kids, on Iggy Pop's landmark Lust for Life album, he's playing with the Sales brothers once again, this time with a shared musical vision and a passion for playing live. So whether or not the critics approve, David Bowie seems content for now to play smaller venues and keep Tin Machine going, even though he's not sure where the music will take them.
You can translate for me, right? Thank you. This one's called Baby Universe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Baby, 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 baby,
This music isn't so much about getting approval, but just about being played.
Yes. It is. It's experimental to a certain degree. It's definitely spontaneous. I'm talking within the live circumstances. It's not a comfortable band, but I think if you give it the time and apply yourself to it, it can be an enjoyable band, an enjoyable experience. I think there's nothing better than watching musicians having musical conversations between themselves. It has the sensibility that one found in jazz, and I'm not paralleling it at all because I think that couldn't be more remotely different from jazz. But the sense of picking up on a motif or something and then changing it and abstracting it and following it through another way is sort of inherently part of what jazz was about at its best. Say Charlie Mingus or Miles Davis or whatever. And it's something that we kind of focus on as being something that we want to get somewhere near, but in rock terms. And it's nothing to do with that dreaded word fusion either. So we're not quite sure where we're going, but we quite like the journey at the moment.
Things that, of course, make headlines and get them out of the way
Things
right away.
that go in the night.
Ooh, could you say that again for me, please? Did you ever even consider that this whole artistic ridiculousness with genitalia, did it cross your mind at all that America would react so differently?
Oh, ho-hum.
Ho-hum.
You're very bright, a very intelligent girl. Why are you even bothering with this question?
Because I have to go back to the station. If I don't, they'll say, God, this is what made the papers. I'd like to talk about everything else. If you gave me an hour, we wouldn't even touch on it.
I know, I get that impression.
The answer's no.
Seriously, it was, I mean, if we wanted to have created, well, firstly, let's remember that it is and was only the record retailers of America that decided to opt for that particular stance. Nowhere else, including Canada, took that position. Secondly, I think if we'd wanted to produce a shocking kind of cover, I think we both are imbued with an uncanny sense of irony that we would at least have given them erections.
At least?
At least, at the very least. We're big for 5 minutes.
Happy Mondays.
Happy Mondays. You look at them with their pro-drug stance, and then you look at Magritte, who never touched anything other than the pipe in his life, and you wonder who came off better.
For each of us, it's a personal journey, right? Wherever it takes you to that place of clarity where you say that this is different than it was
Yeah,
before.
the other thing is, unfortunately, it's called a responsibility, which is a hard thing to have to come to terms with. And what really happens is that everybody around you gets over. That's the very worst aspect of drug taking.
Well, I remember in the Rolling Stone interview, David, you said that up until the 80s, you didn't think that you could make any kind of good music without the use of cocaine.
That's exactly my state of mind at that time, which was absolutely absurd. But I didn't know that because I was completely addicted. I mean, I was a drug addict, miss. Excuse, miss. Ooh, excuse, miss, I was a drug addict.
Was a victim of my own self-persecution.
They say that it must be difficult for people to quit smoking because you make it look so glamorous.
Oh, God, yeah, that's horrible, I know.
Before the tour started.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Watching him do all that stuff, I mean, it's just so...
But I always have. I've always smoked on stage, and I just can't stop now. I don't smoke anything off stage. I never smoke off stage, only on stage.
Really?
Yeah.
I did.
You're delightful. You're delightful. Thank you for coming on the show. Next.
Well, tell them who's going to be on next week's show.
Next week we have... who is on next week's show?
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey, Hammer, and a man who claims to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
And that new rap group, MC Escher.
And the Critics, a new band from Boston, who we absolutely loathe. I don't think there's really been an album that hasn't owed an awful lot to rhythm and blues music. Everything that I've done has had that as a basis.
Getting my facts from a Benetton ad, looking through arrogant eyes, lit by the glare of an LA fire. I've got a face, not just my race, bang bang, I got you, man.
I think black tie, white noise, it refers to the racial boundaries that have been put up in most of the Western world. White noise itself is something that I first encountered on the synthesizer many years ago. There's black noise and white noise. I thought so much of what is said and done by the whites is white noise, so I thought I'd latch onto that. Black ties is because, for me, musically, the one thing that really turned me on to wanting to be a musician or wanting to write was black music. Jazz and rock artists of the 50s. It also has a lot to do with the black and white side of one's thinking, the inside voice and the outside voice, the voice that the world hears and the voice that you speak to yourself with. It's all those issues.
Putting on the black tie, looking out the white noise. Oh, Lord, just let him see me. Oh, Lord, yeah. Let him hear me. Let him call me brother. Let him put his arms around me.
The title, Black Tie, White Noise, actually has some deeper philosophical or social implications, doesn't it?
It was, I mean, it was nothing more than a sort of rather silly wordplay. I mean, as always, I don't see a straight, clear-cut answer to anything in life, and I guess I wanted to, even though the album fundamentally came from a fount of my own feelings and personal experiences over the last 2 or 3 years, I don't think that I had a real black and white take on everything that had happened. It was nothing is crystal clear to me at the best of times. And these are, for me, the best of times. But things are still quite murky. I wanted a title, and indeed it came up with a song that I wrote around the theme of Black Tie, White Noise, that reflected that. So for me, it's a long way of saying, it reflects, the fact of my marriage, it reflects the positive and negative thoughts that I have about relationships, also reflects my own black ties to rhythm and blues music, and what I perceive as what I put on top of it, the white noise. So you know, it's a combination of those kinds of plays on the title. And it kind of summed up, I thought, pretty accurately what the album sounded like to me. There. The riots broke out the day that we landed in LA, and it was an extraordinary feeling. It was an extraordinary feeling because we really felt for the first time at the nub of life's actualities at a very different level than we'd been before. And it felt nothing less than a prison riot here. It really felt as though people had just been cooped up, had been imprisoned innocently, and were like just not willing to be abused in that fashion anymore, even if it meant breaking all social and moral codes, because there was nothing else to lose anyway. What the hell? I think what it was that we both latched onto when we were talking is that there was something happening yet again to both dance music and popular music, there was a certain kind of formula creeping back into everything. And it's at those points you really want to try and break things open again. And we had this idea that there were certain elements of dance and R&B that we really liked. We had some ideas of throwing experimental stuff into that format.
Burning up each other's love, burning up our lives. Tread up cans and working on miracle goodnight. Future full and empty, knocking on the door. Ragged Lynn and hungry mama, miracle no more.
So it's hard to take Niall out of a dance, man. I mean, he's totally into, he does all the clubs. He still does all the clubs. It's amazing. He'll finish a session and go off into the night. And then we'll see him the next day. And he's done 8 clubs. I don't know where he gets the stamina.
Miracle goodnight, turning around, make it alright. Nobody dancing, it was only make-believe.
I wish there was a sailor.
You know, when David and I talk, half of the time we get in these elaborate discussions about just different musical cultures and different sources of the music, different origins of the music before we even do anything. And because of his broad musical background and the type and the taste that he has, I know that it's going to be very, very exciting for me as a musician, but at the same time that there is a point of view. I mean, we are going someplace.
Yeah, we could get a better second half. If left to my own devices, I will really go off at a tangent, and Niall can bring things back in a very sort of in a form that people will sort of assimilate easily.
But also, you got to remember to not compromise the artistic integrity.
I really get kind of indulgent, and Niall is very good at making it more accessible.
There's definitely never a dull moment. I know that he's always going to surprise me. When David comes in with a song, no matter how simple the motif, I know that in his head somewhere, there's a myriad of unbelievable ideas.
Still I keep my love for you. No place to hide, no way to fall. Nowhere to lie, no worlds are wide. I'm sick and tired of telling you, don't let me down and down and down.
Evil in the world, but the forces of good are here to protect the innocent. Poltergeist, The Legacy, coming soon on 5.